Yes, good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts. My name is Fred Indimuli. I'm sitting in for Udwa Kamimo. Now, today on the show, we seek to further interrogate the huge number of aspirants for elective seats on independent tickets and the impact that this may have on Kenya's politics going forward. By last week's deadline, 4,950 or thereabout aspirants had sought clearance to run as independents. This number is unprecedented. In the 2013 elections, for example, only a handful of candidates registered as independent candidates, with only 4 ending up being elected as members of the National Assembly. This time round, however, we are looking at the possibility of having even 10 times that number of independents in Parliament. Well, our guests today are part of the close to 5,000 aspirants who are seeking to be on the ballot come August as independent candidates for various positions. On my right, we have Nicholas Gumbo, who is the current member of Parliament for Ariela constituency. He is now seeking to be the next governor of Siaya County. Karibu sana. On my left, we have Kabando Wakabando, who is seeking to defend his Mukurwene parliamentary seat as an independent. We also do have our regular panelists, Charles Odhiambo and Mutegi Njau. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Well, first things first. When it comes to Kenyan politics and this term independent, have we in our history ever had an independent candidate in the real sense of the word, not just with the tag independent? And you've been in Parliament for quite a while. Do you think we've had in our history an independent candidate in the real sense of independence?
Well, yes and no. I think we have had some people who have held on to principles which they believe in and they have stuck to them. That to me is a portrayal of independence. Yeah.
Can you name any, for example, that you consider as an independent member of the National Assembly?
I think the name really that comes to mind is the late Masinda Muliro. He was very independent-minded. He stood for what he believed in, and of course circumstances then were a lot different than they are now, but to the extent that he held beliefs that were dear to him and he was willing to sacrifice positions with those beliefs, I think he was one of these people that you'd probably say was the father of...
What does that mean? Does it mean he didn't have a political party? Because the independence here, the meaning of independence today, it means you are not in parliament.
I answered it in the context. He said
really independent. But he still belonged to a political party then.
Well, he had no choice because there was only one political party at the time. But I think in terms of thought, in terms of the principles that he held, I think he was a very fair and independent-minded
But if you talk about that, then you can talk about people like Bill and Kagia. Who are
I only mentioned one Mutegi. I only asked to name the whole list. I only named the name that came first to mind.
But you have to go back all those years. Bill and Kagia, Masinda Muliro. Any in the recent past, in the recent, let's say 10, 15 years, any real independent member of the National Assembly, for example, that you can think of?
I would not like to single out any particular individual, but there have been very many in every parliament. All right, in a single party time, there are quite a number of members who are very fiercely independent and who paid a lot of prizes for that. And even in the cabinet, there have been very many members of the cabinet. To talk about independence, you have to start at independence, and you have to come to date. Many of these young people who don't read political materials may not know that once upon a time there was a very respected Goan Masai Kenyan vice president, the late Joseph Murumbi. He of the Kenya National Archives fame and international artifact collections, who resigned his position as a vice president of the Republic of Kenya because he could not allow himself to be a captive of the machinations at the palace. All right, so from independence to even now, even within the current parliament, there are very many members who take positions on the floor of the house and without the house on very critical matters against the whims of their political parties.
Yes.
So but Fred, as recent as the current parliament, there's one Patrick Musima, member of parliament.
Yes.
He's on record as having stood on his own throughout. At one time, even brought a motion to censure the speaker, and because he was not aligned to any affiliation, it easily didn't see the light.
Actually, if you talk about that, you know, in a real sense of independence, you know, you have a member from Sharagani, you have another member from
Buri,
you have Buri, a member of parliament, and you have Kibwezi West. But in the real sense,
yes,
the only member of the current parliament who is neither aligned to Jubilee or CORD,
yes,
yeah, is one Patrick Musimba. Very intelligent,
yes, very smart,
and very respectful.
So out of the 4 members of the National Assembly, the 11th Parliament currently, who are there as independents, only one can be said to be really independent.
Absolutely, that's right.
Now, the member for Bori, when he was here, when he interviewed him last, one would imagine it is Jubilee, because he has been having a lot of support from the president.
Yes.
To the extent that when the president went to his wedding, and when he talked, in fact, we had to ask him, why are you independent?
Yes.
Since you have so much affiliation to Jubilee.
And that's hence the question now. With all these people going in as independents, do you really think we have quite a number of them, or a sizable number, that could really be genuinely independent? Or is it just a matter of another route into parliament, for example? Bonagumbo.
Well, I think the answer could be both, really, but I think most of those, like some of us who have chosen the route to go independent, is really a manifestations of the dysfunctions within our political formations. Don't forget that some of us were there when ODM was founded. We have associated with ODM, but you wouldn't really want to see something that you believe in, you know, being in a way, you know, misused the way the primaries were misused. And you sit there and you have an option to do something about it, and you don't do it. So I would want to think that what we are witnessing now is really an interrogation of the internal operations of our political parties. And I think it's a bigger question. I am praying and hoping that my friend Honorable Kabando, he doesn't want to say it, but he's also fairly independent. Of course, sometimes I have chastised him when he tends to fall behind expediency on issues that I thought he could have taken, you know, a more visible middle ground. But it is really what we are seeing now is an interrogation. In fact, it is a trial of major political formations.
Yes.
Because what I find it very strange that both sides of the divide, each side of the divide is insisting on fidelity to the law when it comes to national elections. But you don't see that being replicated. In fact, you don't even see an attempt. I'll give an example. When we went to the Siaya gubernatorial elections, per se, ODM was running those elections based on its own party regulations. Among the things that those regulations require is that 2 weeks to the elections, you have to know who the returning officer is. You have to know who the presiding officers are. Nobody told us. In fact, this is the first time I went into an election without even knowing where I was going to vote. Because what has happened before is that because of issues of logistics and issues of costs, we have tended for party primaries to collapse some polling stations into one polling center, so that this usually is a consensus between candidates and the referees for that election. But more fundamentally, somewhere along the line, we got to, you know, of course, because you know now, because of the digital revolution, information, privacy, the definition of privacy has completely changed. We started to see some names floating around, and we said, wait a minute, but these are employees of the county government. How can they then be the ones managing elections?
Yes.
We raised these issues with the party, the chair of the elections board, and even the leader of the party himself. And we said, look, we know so and so. He works for the county government. He can't manage these elections. We didn't get an answer. So I am thinking that this is what is on trial is not Kabando and myself who have chosen, the entity that's on trial is not Kabando and myself who have chosen to go independent, but it is the major political formations.
Yes.
And in fact, that reminds me, I'm also fairly Christian, of Matthew 7 verse 2, which says that you cannot expect to judge others by higher standards than those with which you expect to be judged.
Okay.
So are we then being hypocritical when we demand of national institutions standards that we ourselves are not willing to propagate. I think that's the bigger question.
And you use the right word, hypocritical, because now, and Charles, I'm trying to draw a parallel between the real intention to run as an independent, the fact that you just simply disgruntled.
Precisely, and that's come out very clearly from what Engineer Gumbo is saying here. He says he was part of the formation of ODM. He cannot sit back and see bad things happening. He has to look for another way of seeking solace to get an opportunity to correct the ills. So clearly, I think it's still very delicate to define independent candidate. Is it independence of mind, opinion, stand, position, or is it independence as an alternative to a target?
And once you get to where you're heading, once you get to the destination, which in your case will be Governor Siaya County, in your case you go back to the National Assembly as member for Mukurweini, where do your allegiances lie? You had to resign from your party for you to run as an independent. But once you go back, do your allegiances still lie with Jubilee?
I think you have captured it very, very well. You know, it's about political pragmatism, really, about what works. Political realism. So, in my case, and I suppose in his case, you know, he represents his party as the chairman of a public accounts committee. I know how he came in as a chairman. It was not really like a party sponsored, it was like a consensus across.
And clearly that was the beginning of his downfall.
Okay, that was okay, and some of us were also taking positions on the floor of the house, sometimes against the green. But when you go down to the facts, I am Jubilee. That's the reality. I'm Jubilee.
Despite resigning from the party.
Despite resigning from the party. I've only dealt with the political realism to permit myself and those who share in the grievance as an independent candidate to obtain a route, because I want to be very sincere. I want to be very, you know, honest.
So, Bwana Kamando, you're saying even once you get back to Parliament as an independent member for Mukurweini, your allegiances are clear. You'll still go back to Jubilee.
Even before, but he's going to campaign now. There is no way you can campaign against Jubilee and get elected. He must say, and,
not only actually,
you must say that I support the president.
Not only that, I am part of the presidential campaign. All right. I was the chair of the political mobilization subcommittee of the national steering team in the formation of Jubilee Party. The only exit that I made is from the ballot marked Jubilee with the logo of Jubilee.
So there are two Jubilee candidates for Mukurweini.
No, everybody who is contesting in Mukurweini
is Jubilee.
I have not seen any NASA candidate in Mukurweini. All of them in my constituency, 6 of them so far, parliamentary, are Jubilee. Some are in PNU, others are in DP, NAC Kenya, others are independent. But these are children of the same homestead.
Is the situation the same for you, that you're still, even despite all the grievances that you have against your against ODM, you're still your allegiances, you still owe allegiance to that party?
Well, of course, you know, I am seeking the vote from the Siaya people, an overwhelming majority who are ODM. So what I have a problem with is the way the elections were run.
Let me ask you that before you go on.
Yes.
When there was fracas in Kasarani,
when
the ODM had elections there, and then there came the phenomenon of black.
The men in black.
Men in black. You are in ODM.
Yes.
What did you do about that to ensure that the system you're against does not affect you?
We, of course, not everything that we do comes to the media. But incidentally, what you may not know is that I was also a candidate when the Men in Black, I was a candidate for Secretary General of ODM at the time.
The elections that never took place.
The elections that never took place. Not everything we do, a lot of the things that matter really are backroom stuff. And in fact, after that, the negotiations that yielded the officials of ODM, the consensus building, I was a very active member of that, because of course what happened wasn't good for us, the image of the party at that time, and we had to do something about it. And don't forget, like Kabando says, what we are saying here is that we have a because look at his case, Jubilee, they have the National Elections Board. Among our case, ODM, we also have the National Elections Board. But for some reason, when it comes to conducting election, neither the goodwill nor the conviction to conduct credible election is not there. And I can tell you, this is not something that can be taken lightly, because in my case, I would give you an example of Sia County, or even the ODM regulations for that matter. The ODM regulations are very clear that before election regulation, before you declare elections at ward level, you must declare the polling stations in that ward. Before you go to the constituency, you must declare the ward results. And before you declare the county results, you must declare the sub-county results. You saw the circus that happened on TV. Somebody comes from nowhere. In fact, incidentally, what perhaps you people do not know is that the gentleman who declared the gubernatorial election results was driven into the venue by county government vehicles. So this is what we are complaining about. Yes. We cannot have a fight with ODM. ODM,
it is just the process of party primaries.
It is the process of the party primaries. Okay. And then again, from where I sit, and I have results to prove it, over nearly 130,000 people came out to campaign for me. And this decision was not even mine, by the way. The day after those so-called results were declared, myself and my good friend Jacoyo Midio, we decided that if it is true that the people rejected us, let's go and ask them, have you really rejected us?
Because,
and if you have not rejected us, what do you want us to do?
Yes, I will not be belaboring the point about how shambolic or chaotic the party primaries were, because that's very clear. Even the report by KNCHR has come out to say, and that's across the board. Going forward, because there's been so much talk of possible caucusing of independence in Parliament. But just listening to you, although you're going for governorship, you are in Parliament and you know how the workings of the National Assembly are. Is it even possible for this independence, maybe once they're elected, 30 of them, 40 of them, to caucus? Or will they just simply go back and fall back in line in as far as party allegiances are concerned?
I think let's not raise stakes where they don't exist. I foresee a situation where there may be 5 or so members of the National Parliament as true independents. That number may rise. Now is 1. My friend, mutual friend, Patrick Musumba. But the rest will be in the motley of the party, immediate dominant party infrastructure. Yes. Even these small, not just independents, even the small parties. You have already seen. For instance, when you are doing our national delegates conference recently, to endorse the presidential and presidential candidate and his running mates, you saw the president, the leader of Jubilee Party, first went to 4 NDCs to be endorsed by those NDCs. What does that mean? It means when he goes, for instance, when he goes to Kirinyaga, do you think he's going to fight the candidate of Nakenya, whose delegates have already endorsed him? When he goes to Baringo, do you think he's going to fight
but we expect that he will campaign for the Jubilee candidate.
This is going to be very complicated. It's going to be more complicated than Kenyans can imagine, because we understand. For instance, I don't have any grievance against my party Jubilee. Okay, and I say my party Jubilee. I have not registered any grievance. I have not appealed any whatever. I just made a decision that resign from the party. That given the scenario, and given the findings, I'm moving on peacefully to be an independent and do my parliamentary campaign, but I have not left the presidential programs. Now, I expect at the hour of need, the president will go to the counties, and his running mate will go to the counties, the deputy president. They will meet all these candidates. If they come to Nyeri, for instance, they will be received by the Jubilee lineup. But do you expect that they will come to Mukurweini and I will be absent? Do you expect the president?
Do you expect to find a space on the podium?
Oh yeah. Not only a space in the podium, prominent space for that matter.
What if you're denied? And
I cannot be denied. I cannot be denied.
Why would you be allowed? We are not in that party.
No, I'm telling you, you are dealing with the political pragmatism and reality, not idealism.
But I think, when I'm taking I think you put it across quite correctly earlier, that probably the kind of anxiety or reservation that this gentleman we have here has to do with a lot of politics on the ground. That none of them wants to stir the waters and affect their own campaign, so you cannot be seen to speak against the party going forward. Yet you know very well that when the party leader of this, either Jubilee or ODM, comes to the ground, he will not campaign for Ibona Gumbo. Instead, he'll campaign for Bona Rasanga, who is an ODM party candidate.
It's unlikely. It's unlikely.
Like Mheshimiwa Kabando said, it's all about political pragmatism. Who, as a presidential candidate, would want to face voter apathy because you are talking against somebody who has numbers? It's very tricky. The presidential candidates are in a catch situation. They have to go there and appear like everybody belongs to me. And they just come and give me.
Can you deal with two things also? First, who is going to deny that the primaries were not a sham? Who is going to belabor the point that really they don't reflect the general true will of the people?
But yourself, when you are defeated, you considered,
I did.
wrote very nice things about in the social media.
Absolutely, I did.
Then all of a sudden you decided
it was not all of a sudden, Mutegi. Let me finish with the third. Number one point is that nobody truly will go to any place in the Republic of Kenya seeking presidential vote, and I mean here the Jubilee candidate and the NASA candidate, because the reality is that the salad of candidates in the field who are endorsing them have their followers, and they need to go forward.
So who is the loser here?
Number two is reality also. If you come to Nyeri, we even all those new candidates, and then we are not fighting them. I'm not fighting them. I'm not even fighting the candidate who has a Jubilee ticket in Mukuru. We are just in competition. Really, if the president comes to Nyeri, do you think that he will ignore the fact that there are some tall trees, whether they are on small parties, whether they are independents, whose face recognition and whose voice may be more powerful and more important in mobilizing the vote on the ground in his favor?
Yes.
That's the reality.
And now, therefore, are we saying that the first effect of this independent factor that you're seeing is that it's diluting the strength of the ODM ticket probably in Nyanza and the Jubilee ticket in Mount Kenya, that now, even if you have the ODM party ticket in Siaya, it's no longer strong, it's no longer a guarantee. Previously, you fought
Fred, the political space has changed completely. I can tell you for a fact, the day after these results were declared, and I'm not here to speak for my friend Jacoyo Video, in Game constituency, the results that were announced were based on 55 polling stations out of 105 polling stations. And the returning officer said as much. He said, I've been instructed to announce this result. As I was leaving Jacoyo's home, I found a very elderly woman crying and shedding tears. And she said, if Jacoyo is not on the ballot, then what am I voting for? Politics has become, the political space has changed so much that you find the people on the ground that their route to identifying with the president is not even the MP, it is the MCA. You deny that person a chance to be on the ballot because everybody has got their own sphere of influence where they so I would find it, I'm not saying they're not going to do it. I hear, for example, I see a lot of people saying on our side that those of us who are not in ODM are Jubilee fellows. And then I would say then the converse would be true, that the Jubilee independents like Kabando would be ODM fellows, which is really nonsensical. What is happening now is that, look at the competition that I went in Siaya. These 130,000 people on equal platform came out to vote for one Nicholas Gumbo. What would have changed so much that all of them, all of a sudden, just because Gumbo now calls himself independent, they are saying, okay, because you are independent, now you have been infected by leprosy, we can't associate with you. It's not possible. So the political space has changed, and this thing called evolution, by the way, is changing, if it was to work,
yes,
is completely going to change the paradigms of the way we do politics. Because, you know, how do you, for example, if a name, I saw, for example, in one of the constituencies, a colleague who is with us in Parliament, who did he lose to? He lost to an MCA from one of the wards in the constituency, who is upgrading to be an MP. Why? Because the things this fellow is doing to the people is directly touching their lives, and in terms of their political aspirations and space, and in terms of their aspirations as human beings, they would rather associate with this fellow and let the other fellow called the MP. So I don't think...
Despite the shambolic primaries, some of them went through...
but there's something positive about the primaries. This is the first time in Kenya's history that parties have really attempted primaries. And number two, this is the first time when the same have been interrogated thoroughly. For instance, you in Royal Media, you did a very good job. You know, the countdown, the reports. You know, Kenyans were hooked to televisions. In many instances, the reportage was like what happens in the US.
The country actually had a mini general election.
We had like a mini general election
that went on for days, and
it went on for an end. Yes, but that must be recognized. As Engineer Gubo says, devolution has impacted very nicely on the ground, and empowerment is happening. Then this effort at the primaries has also reawakened the Republic to the importance of political parties. Okay, but the only unfortunate thing is that the incumbent dominant political parties don't really have the infrastructure, because the small parties have not been doing. It's only Jubilee and the main parties in the NASA, which have attempted these primaries. The other small parties gave their tickets directly. So this was a watershed. It's a milestone. It's a first. In fact, in the region, in Uganda, in Rwanda, in Tanzania, these things have not happened. So as much as we are complaining, and we don't want to, as it normally says, we don't want to write the book of lamentations, we must appreciate that we have made a gain. Now when you go to this general election, the second election in a devolved system with a new constitution will be a very important lesson for the need to have infrastructure that is firm system within political parties. I want to give you just one example as you move on, your next speaker. Jubilee, good party. I'm a founder member, and it has very large membership. But we can tell you, whether it's on Wiper, Jubilee, or in ODM, or in Ford Kenya, there was the internet party register that was being used during the nominations. And if you come to Mukoroine, there isn't a single Jubilee official. There is not a single Jubilee delegate. The first delegate to the Jubilee National Delegates Conference are the individuals who are nominated on Jubilee as a member of parliament, candidate, and also as MCAs. Meaning that the infrastructure at the local level does not exist. And I'm talking as a founder member and a senior level format who understands that. So that's what I'm saying.
Why is that so? That means we're negligent.
Not negligent. What I'm saying is that although we have established the office of the political parties registrar, and that there have been an effort to anchor the institutions and leadership of political parties, we are still as a country transiting. And I think to celebrate that nascence, that youngness of our democracy is important.
And which makes me ask Fred before we take the break. So clearly this was not by default that members of parliament passed a law that prohibited party hopping but gave room to party resignation and becoming independent candidates. Did you people do this
incidentally?
Intentionally?
Incidentally, it's not members of parliament who did that. That's a constitutional ground. What is happening now, and that's why you saw, for example, the chair of IBC coming to the front and saying, well, there may be no party hopping, but 90 days to the election, you can resign and contest it. So it has nothing to do with that law.
And then after the break, we'll be looking at the possibility of Parliament trying to change the laws further to probably seal this independent loophole and what that would mean. That after the break.